Welcome, welcome, welcome. So happy to be in your presence today for this meditation. And the first thing that I wanted to share, which just came to me in my meditation this morning, was have you ever noticed that all those times when we thought we were running from life, we were actually only running towards it? That the reason we run away from anything is because of how badly we want to experience this life in its fullest expression possible. That's why. And today's conversation is about reflection. What I see universally, none of us are immune to it. We're doing work towards it, but we're not immune to it, is this experience of lack of friendliness towards ourselves. And sometimes that's knowingly. Most of the time it's unknowingly. That's why we're going to use meditation to dive into it deeper. Like, what's the opportunity to be more friendly towards ourselves? And the meditation's going to awaken that. I was reading about the life of Khalil Gibran this morning and spending some time, hence the download. Jenny, I know you enjoy his work immensely. Something in all of his teachings and other teachings of people that are, on the pathway, trying to understand how to take the meaning of life, what they're giving the meaning of life, to a higher level, right? Not to have it be this mundane, hellacious experience of suffering, which we all know what that feels like. But the goal of being here and having this conversation is, what does it look like? How can I help myself take it to a higher level? How can I touch into this highest self? I'm pretty sure, because I don't know what's going to happen exactly with the meditation, but the meditation is actually going to help us look at these two dimensions of reality, right? The pure soul awareness and that small self identification that we all get sucked into all the time, believing in the story of the smallness rather than in this pure soul, higher truth, higher self, whatever you want to call it. But the thing that I want you to kind of be thinking about at the highest level is the ideal, is the conception of you in your perfection. The conception of you in your perfection, not your perfection. That's where we get distracted. That's where we get caught up. We think that it's all about being perfect, and then everything starts to happen the way we want. You see that? If I have the money, if I have the perfect relationship, if I have the perfect job, if I have perfect health, then I'm worthy of the happiness that I'm seeking. There's just one more thing. The problem is that will never bring us the happiness that we ultimately seek. The happiness is going to come in understanding the conception of you in your perfection. And the way we get there is by understanding how we've got patterns of judgment running constantly, a script in the background, judging ourselves, judging others, judging ourselves constantly. And we're holding everyone, ourselves and others, to a level of concept of perfection that's actually missing the whole point. And so if I can, my goal with all of the work is, how can I help you become a better witness to what's happening in your life so that you're free from the shackles of this constant narrative of criticism to yourself and to others. Because if you're caught up in that, you're not going to be free, and you'll be reminded of it on a moment by moment basis. But you might not know how to break that cycle, because we live in a world where that's what's happening all the time. And so that gets reinforced way more than the conversation that we're having here today. The other thing, I wanted to read a little bit from this book called 8 Steps to Happiness. This was the teacher I studied under, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, for 11 years. And it's about the meditation, just to kind of solidify the power of meditation, the power of contemplation, and why we do this to help us with what we're talking about. And he says, how is it possible for something that exists only in your imagination to become a reality? It is a remarkable, right? Because in meditation, we're practicing the state of being that we want to have all the time. That's what we're doing, rehearsing it over and over and over again. So he's saying, how is it possible for something that's just existing, what feels like it's just you're making it up in your mind, to become a reality? It is a remarkable quality of the mind that we first create objects with our imagination and then bring them into our everyday reality. In fact, everything starts in the imagination. For example, the house we are presently living in was created first in the imagination of the architect. He or she then made a design on paper, which acted as the blueprint for the actual building. If no one had first imagined our house, it would never have been built. In reality, our mind is the creator of all experience. All external creations, such as money, cars, computers, were developed in dependence upon someone's imagination. If no one had imagined them, they would never have been invented. In the same way, all inner creations and all spiritual realizations, even liberation and enlightenment, are developed in dependence upon the imagination. Therefore, for both worldly and spiritual attainments, the imagination is of primary importance. If we imagine something that could in theory exist, and then familiarize our mind with it long enough, eventually it will appear directly to our mind, first to our mental awareness, and then even to our sense awareness. For as long as the object is still just an imagined object, the mind apprehends it as simply a belief. If the object is a beneficial one and is a correct belief, and if the object stimulates delusions, it is an incorrect belief. So when beliefs cause us pain and suffering, we're making the assumption they're incorrect just by that understanding. If they're causing us joy and happiness, obviously we are not completely self-centered beings. Nobody would be attracted to this work in this moment, right? So we're just focused on our own personal experience here. So if we're feeling joy, we're going to trust that that's the right pathway for us, right? That's a truth for us. So a belief is a conceptual mind that apprehends its object by means of a generic image of that object. Okay, it just comes up with an idea, generic image. But if we meditate on a correct belief for long enough, the generic image will become progressively more transparent until eventually it disappears entirely and we perceive the object directly. The object will then have become a real object. This is what when we talk about integration, that's what we're talking about. It's becoming integrated into our being rather than just a belief. Maybe that's a feeling sense in our body, a true knowing sense. That's what we're awakening, this idea of what do you know? This is where values are so helpful. The reason we suffer so much is that we're confused about our values and how to actually live our values. But if we're always living our values, there will not be suffering. We will be able to make meaning, loving meaning out of everything. but we get confused about our values. We don't live according to our values, and that's where problems happen. So one of the patterns that we're doing here is we're meditating on what's really important to us. It's becoming our reality. And then we start making decisions from the level of our values and our priorities. And a life that's lived according to your highest values and priorities will never steer you down the wrong path. What again is happening naturally is we're confused and we make decisions that aren't tied to our truest values, not someone else's values, but our own values, because it's integrated, not a belief. When we have other people's beliefs infecting kind of our thoughts, we aren't in touch with those integrated experiences that we're trying to create through meditation. Just see if there's, by meditating on beneficial, at first, their beliefs, because they haven't been integrated, by meditating on beneficial beliefs, what happens is we start to destroy the small mind, the small me, the focus on all of the suffering, the focus on what's wrong with us, the preoccupation that happiness can only come when I'm perfect and I have everything lined up perfectly. That's not true. The truth is that, back to this, the conception of you in your perfection, that's what we're trying to become more familiar with. Many of us have a hard time with this because we didn't get taught that there was even an idea of our own perfection early in life. It wasn't reinforced to us. So we're like, well, what might that look like? So that's where we use things like values, getting to the core values, doing the meditation, trusting in unconditional love meditation. We do that for a while because it starts to awaken what are those truths. It shows us. It's so cool. This is when we say the truth is within you. It's all there. You're just clearing out the stuff that tells you some other story that's not true. Barbara, yes, I think everyone, and maybe every week, it's trying to reassert itself. Like we get some clarity and then we get kind of fall off the wagon. We get some clarity and we fall off the wagon. No judgment, all love, acceptance, right? All of it. Because when you believe, when you start to see yourself as the witness to the suffering that you're experiencing, the choices that you're making that aren't helping you, when you start becoming the witness to that, those things start to become less and less important. And absolute humility opens up inside of you, because this is not denying all the quirks and flaws and strange things that you do. It is not denying that. And it's also not saying you're bad as a result of that. There is no such thing as an inherently bad person. Right? So we're just becoming the witness so this witness is the engager of the friendly attitude to you. I'm going to always be friendly to you. I'm always going to love you, even when you do stupid ass shit. You see the difference there? Like you can see the whole spectrum and be okay with it. Without making yourself bad and wrong, because that's the loop. Those are the loops we get caught in.
Like forgiveness too, right? Forgiveness
Yeah.
plays right in there.
Yes, because forgiveness is the practice that we're probably going to have to go back to over and over and over again. This is where forgiveness solves all of our problems, because we got a lot of stuff we're hanging on to about what we've done wrong in the past, the mistakes that we've made. Is that the high self? Is that the high self? Like, that's not forgiving? No. The high self is unconditional love, sees all parts of us and loves us to pieces. We all have that within us. We're looking for more familiarity and comfort through our meditation practice to establish the clarity that that's always there for us. We are our own best friend. If you can't be your own best friend, do you think anyone else can be? Truly? Yeah. There was a little passage from Khalil that I want to, okay. Oh, this is what's coming through. Khalil, if you don't know, I mean, he had a pretty rough life, a very abusive father who he never spoke ill of. Spent all of his money when he was little in Lebanon on alcohol and ran the family into bankruptcy, got arrested, went into prison. His family ultimately immigrated to the United States. And when they got here, many of the people in his family, including his beloved, brother, sister, mother, all passed away in a very short amount of time. That awakened him to where he spent the rest of his life in channeling his work, touching into this highest self-consciousness. And then the work came through the highest self-consciousness, because all of that pain and suffering, just like that honing of the knife, right? Like to be able to slice through the prison of the small self, that's what happens for many of us when we go through a lot of trauma. That's the only reason I'm here today, being able to talk about this, is because of all the years of suffering. So I can relate to his story. So I just needed to give a little bit of understanding. And he knew, I think he started channeling early in life, even before he started suffering. He came, I think what it's like every few hundred years, a blazing beacon hurls itself onto this plane called reality. So that's, how we could look at his life. So he says, a letter dated 1918, March 1st, that was communicating with his close love, Mary Haskell, the artist. Silence is painful, but in silence, things take form, and we must wait and watch. In us, in our secret depth, lies the knowing element which sees and hears that which we do not see nor hear. All our perceptions, all the things we have done, all that we are today, dwelt once in that knowing, silent depth, that treasure chamber in the soul. And we are more than we think. We are more than we know. That which is more than we think and know is always seeking and adding to itself while we are doing, or think we are doing nothing. But to be conscious of what is going in our depth is to help it along. When subconsciousness meets consciousness, the seed in our winter-clad selves turns to flowers, and the silent life in us sings with all its might. This life reveals much of that which we do not know, but it is life after death that reveals all. Some notes that I have that I got from my past life regression teacher, interesting enough. This is actually written in the context of how much Khalil was actually talking about past lives in his teachings. But even back then, he didn't use the word reincarnation, but talked about it a lot. Okay. So I'm just going to check in before we do the meditation, because I feel all the energy buzzing, and just feeling someone else in this moment is going to help me ground that energy, because that was a lot. So anybody just want to share your reflection for a moment with me?